Hey everybody, welcome back to your favorite series on this channel, RPG Terraria! This time around, I used another RPG mod along with Fargo's Soul mod, and I obviously made sure it was going to be on Eternity mode. Now initially, things started off pretty rocky, because it's kinda hard to kill an enemy with over 1000 health when you yourself only have 500 health. But don't you worry, I made sure things take a turn for the more insane. Want an Excavator that deals over 2000 damage? What about a Sun Fury that deals over 100,000 damage? Or maybe you want some random yo-yo that deals 19,386,502 damage. Here on the Oklah YouTube channel, we've got it all. Would you rather have a wall of flesh that has over 200,000 health, or a nebula pillar that has over 2 billion health? Or maybe you'd prefer a little goblin that has over 50,000 health and will hit you like a semi going 90 miles per hour down the interstate? Whatever it is that you want, I can assure you we've got it here. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the carnage. As soon as I spawned, the first thing I did was activate Eternity mode, cause I hate myself. I then talked to an NPC named the Deviant that just fell out of the sky, and it gave me all sorts of goodies to get started. I got life crystals, I got Eurus's socks, which is basically just Hermes boots, but most importantly, I got a bunch of magic storage. I didn't have to make any chests or search for any gems whatsoever. Once I was done sorting through all my loot, I mined some trees, kidnapped a golden squirrel, and made myself a little shack to settle down in. At this point, I decided to go melee because it's the only class I haven't used with this RPG mod yet, so I took a quick peek at my wooden sword and noticed that there's a bit of combat information. It let me know that charged strikes can deal killing blows to damage enemies, killing blows deal double damage whenever the attack would finish off an enemy, attacking enemies midair launches me towards them, and damage can be increased by player velocity. Now that I knew the basics, I found a place to use my half Excavator that I got from the Deviant, and this made mining so much easier. Soon after mining, I realized that my RPG settings had been reversed from the last video, but I wanted to make this one actually like an RPG, so the only modification I made was that I upped the item XP multiplier from 1 to 2, just to make things like a bit less grindy and more fun. The game had just started and the enemies already had hundreds of health, and since I only dealt 5 damage, it was a very rough start. Eventually, I was able to kill a few enemies and level up. I put my single skill point into the Tourist class, which just gives me a 5% damage increase to everything. Once I was sick and tired of dying to literally everything, I went home and made myself a tungsten chainmail and a gold broadsword. The sword still wasn't that good, but it was significantly better than what I had. On day 2, I went back into the mines to find some more tungsten and hopefully some more life crystals, but I still died every single step of the way. After a bit, I came back home, finished my armor, and then went right back down to find the rest of the life crystals that I needed. Once I had found them all, I came back home. By this time, I was level 8 and decided that I would be the strongest warrior there ever was, so I threw all of my stat points into strength and all of my skill points into bonus melee damage. It just increases my melee damage by 1% per skill point. I ended the day by building a new house directly on top of my old one. I continued building this house for pretty much all of day 3, because I like to build my houses completely different almost every single time I play this game, so just let me know what you think of this one, because I think it is gorgeous. I then went off to go exploring, but I was met with the Crimson on the right and a boring-ass desert on the left, so I shot that exploring idea down real quick. I instead started building some NPC housing. I finished making just 6 little NPC houses on day 4 and went right back into the mines to gather up some glowing mushrooms, but I instead met face to face with a woman that literally showered me in love until I died. Frankly, I was getting sick of the mines, but I kept going back down there just to die, and honestly, I am just not sure why. While I was down there, I got to level 10 and just continued putting all of my stat points into strength and all of my skill points into bonus melee damage, and I'm not going to mention leveling up as much anymore because it gets way too repetitive to do this all the time, so I'll mention it when I hit like a new milestone or when something changes. Once I was officially done mining, I decided that I need to get wings because dealing with fall damage and having a cloud in a bottle hugging up one of my accessory slots was just not it, so I used all the rope that I had and went up as high as I could. When I ran out of rope, I totally knew that I was way too low in the sky to find a cloud island, but I kept on looking anyway by placing all of my insta bridges to walk along. I obviously never ended up finding any wings, and I was at a loss of what to do, but then I remembered that this is Fargo's Soul mod, and Fargo's Soul mod adds enchantments, so I did some research and decided to start making the Shade Wood enchantment. I then went over to the Crimson to get Shade Wood, Vile Shrooms, and a Blood Orange. On day 5, all I needed was a painting named Deadland Comes Alive from the painter to finish my Shadewood enchantment, but I was all full on housing, so I spent the morning of day 5 building some more. Once the painter arrived, I swooped him up and took him to the Crimson to buy the painting from him. And I left him for dead. I completely left him for dead. I then noticed that the Ebonwood enchantment, like the Crimson version of the Shadewood enchantment, would be just as easy to make, because all I needed to do was get the same stuff that I had for the Shadewood enchantment and convert it at an altar to the corrupt version of it, so I got a duplicate of everything as well. Now that I had all of the components, I went over to an altar in the Crimson and made the Shadewood enchantment and the Ebonwood enchantment. The Shadewood enchantment surrounds me in an aura of bleeding, and enemies struck while bleeding spew damaging blood, and the Ebonwood enchantment surrounds me in an aura of shadow flame. Needless to say, these enchantments made me much more powerful, but the Shadewood enchantment makes an awful mess, a horrible mess. At the end of the night, the Eye of Cthulhu spawned, and this guy was much more difficult than I thought he would be, but I got much further than I thought I would, so it was alright. On day 6, I remembered that my armor also levels up, so I put all of its evolution points into increasing my defense. I didn't really have much to do until nighttime, so I took a quick peek at my boss checklist and noticed that there's a new boss that I have to fight before everything else, the Trojan Squirrel. So I set up an arena and had my little brothers watch me take out a mechanized squirrel.
Oh, oh shoot.
Ow.
This is cool. How dare you, Squirrel Mo? It's all your fault. You summoned this girl with the blood.
Oh, did you see that? Oh my goodness.
Now the whole alien's covered in blood.
Yeah, come on. Look what your curse did. No! Oh, jeez,
So
about to die.
close.
Ready?
Yeah. 3, 2, 1.
Ready? Oh my gosh, I'm about to die.
Oh, yay.
Oh, no!
Oh, so close, though.
He's not dead.
Oh!
Shh.
How is he not dead?
Shh. Oh no.
It's only out.
Oh,
This your villager. He's almost dead.
it's okay. My villager can die. Ow! No, please. I'm so close.
You close to dying.
I'm close to winning. Come on.
There's one more hit.
Yeah! From the squirrel, I got a tree sword that deals 16 damage and shoots an acorn, and I also got something called a box of gizmos. It exposes nearby treasure while I stand still and grants auto fire to all items, which is absolutely wonderful to have when going melee. I spent the rest of the day fighting the Trojan squirrel again just for fun and cleaning up mountains of dead squirrels. After all this squirrel nonsense, I reached level 16 and equipped a new class called Swordman. It increases my melee damage by 60% and my dodge chance by 5%, but decreases my health by 10% and my armor by 5%. My sword now deals 35 damage. It literally doubled the damage. I then gathered up all the materials needed to make the lead enchantment. It allows me to take 40 less damage over time, and my attacks now inflict enemies with a contagious lead poisoning. I spent the rest of the day farming the Trojan Squirrel for no reason whatsoever, and once night arrived, I managed to defeat the Eye of Cthulhu. I ended up getting an agitating lens, an accessory that pretty much makes me a tank for 7.5 seconds and then completely stuns me for 2.5 seconds, so I just did not use it. I also got a handful of iron crates, which I then used to make the Falcon Blade. It deals 47 damage, like 47 base damage without any upgrades. Once I was done sifting through my loot, I headed over to the Crimson, built a pretty good arena in my opinion, and attempted to take on the Brain of Cthulhu. But there were these like homing balls of ichor that just got the better of me. Not to mention that like each creeper has over 2,000 health. But I did get a Brain of Cthulhu summon, so that's kind of cool. When I got home, I was greeted with a lovely goblin army that took me the rest of the night and the morning of day 9 to defeat. By the time the goblins were defeated, I was level 30, and after using all of my stat points, skill points, and the weapon's evolution points, my Falcon Blade dealt over 100 damage. That's hard mode type damage. I haven't even defeated the Brain of Cthulhu yet. Also, the goblins left quite the mess for me to clean up, but because of my enchantment, it was literally impossible to clean this. I went back over to the Crimson to fight the Brain of Cthulhu, but I got sidetracked because from one of the orbs, I got the Rotten Fork, and I converted that into a Ball o' Hurt that deals a base damage, now hear me out, a base damage of 60. Base damage of 60. I also found the Goblin Tinkerer, so I had to go home and make Spectre Boots for this fight. But I still lost. I still ended up losing. I got much closer, but I still lost. When I respawned, I summoned another Goblin army to level up my new weapon and myself, but mainly my weapon. I continued fighting this goblin army until the morning of day 10, and once it was over, I was level 33, and my Ball o' Hurt had ascended and dealt 99 damage. It would be dealing more, but its evolution tree didn't have an ascension point slot yet, so I would just have to wait for that to pop up. I now felt super ready to fight the Brain of Cthulhu, and since I had it summoned, I just added another layer to the arena outside my house and defeated him there. From the Brain, I got a Gutted Heart, an accessory that summons 5 creepers to surround you and block damage, but since my health was increasing with every level up, I decided that I didn't need it. I ended up making some Crimson Armor and a Deathbringer pickaxe. With the Brain of Cthulhu defeated and the dreadful Skeletron fight drawing closer and closer, I decided to summon more goblin armies and spent the rest of the day just slaughtering them. I finished slaying gobbies on day 11 and I was now level 42. During the goblin massacre, I switched my weapon to the meatball because its base damage was 92 and after ascending it twice, it now deals 280 damage. Just barely under 300 damage. We have endgame type damage now. After everything was done and my house was coated in a new shade of red, I allocated all of my skill points and made more NPC housing. Now that I was feeling like an absolute unit, I went to go finish the elevator on day 12, but I ran into lava and the potion lady still hadn't spawned yet, so guess what? I summoned another goblin army, baby. Once all the gobbies had been dealt with, I was now level 46 and my meatball dealt 473 damage. It had pretty much doubled in damage in just a single goblin army. It was absolutely insane. Afterwards, I got right back to finishing the elevator and chose to just bring water into my hole instead of using a potion. Eventually, I had reached hell and I definitely needed an obsidian skin potion to mine the hellstone, and thankfully I got one from a vase, so I just got to mining. Once I was done mining, I went home and made myself a molten pickaxe and some molten armor, and with the molten armor, my meatball deals 537 damage. We're literally gonna be in the thousands soon already, and I haven't even defeated the Skeletron. This is nuts. At the end of the night, I bought a gravitational potion from the potion lady because she'd finally spawned, and got myself a pair of wings. To start off day 13 just right, I went over to the dungeon, made just a short little platform, and lost miserably to the Skeletron. I went back over to the dungeon once it was bright enough to see, and took my time building an actual arena with levels and shit. After it was built, I tried to clean it because the platforms had literally been stained red with blood, but it wasn't working, so I just went home and summoned another goblin army. By the time they were defeated, it was already almost 7:30, so I allocated all of my points, which made my meatball deal 601 damage, and I headed over to the dungeon, summoned the Skeletron, and lost again, and just got absolutely destroyed. Since summoning the Skeletron restarts the entire night, I fought him again right after, and I was so close to winning. So close! But the time reached 4:30, which caused the Skeletron to enter its, Dungeon Guardian phase, and so I just died. It was now day 14, and since I had an entire day to kill, I was going to spend it slaughtering goblins, but after some time, my meatball reached a point where it wouldn't be able to level up again until another boss had been defeated. So I went looking for a ruby to hopefully summon the Slime King. Eventually, I ran out of time and never ended up finding a ruby, but I did hit level 50, which means I got to switch up classes to a new class called Mercenary. It increases my melee damage by 100%, my dodge chance by 10%, but decreases my health by 20% and my armor by 10%. Afterwards, I went right back to the dungeon and lost to the Skeletron not once, not twice, but 3 times, and each attempt took me like 5 minutes, so I'd been fighting this guy for like 15 minutes straight, just non-stop fighting him for 15 minutes straight, and it was awful. And it doesn't help that he has over 100,000 health in his head alone, and each hand has 40,000 health. I was sick and tired of this shitty ass boss at this point, so I just cranked the boss health multiplier on the config from 1 all the way down to 0.1, and I still lost. I still lost this fight. It was all because of the stupid mode where after you kill the Skeletron, it turns into a dungeon guardian or whatever, but it's alright. I went right back and actually defeated them. It was alright. You didn't call me a cheater or whatever for doing this, but I actually don't care. I was so sick of this stupid ass boss. From him, I got a necromantic brew, which basically just makes dashing more viable, but I didn't want it, so I never used it. What I did want was a shadow key so that I could get the Sun Fury from the shadow chest down in hell, so I went down to the dungeon and began my search. After a little bit, I got a golden key, so I went home and turned it into a shadow key with a couple of the crates that I got from the Skeletron. I then bought a ruby from the jeweler so that I could make the King Slime summon and defeat him, but I didn't even get the slimy saddle, and killing the King Slime took so much longer than I thought it would, so I just fell down to hell and got a Sun Fury out of my first chest. I spent about half the day farming goblins to level up the Sun Fury, but after ascending it 3 whole times, I realized that its evolution tree was absolutely awful. It was dog shit. So I went back down to hell and got myself another Sun Fury and continued farming. I spent the entirety of day 16 leveling up my Sun Fury because this one actually had a good evolution tree, and by the end of the day, it dealt 1,499 damage. We're in the thousands now. It's just only going to get crazier from here. Sorry if I sound a little groggy for the rest of the video. I ended up getting sick, so I'm recording all this audio with a stuffed nose. I finished up the last goblin army on day 17 and got to work on a few king slimes until I got the slimy saddle, because who doesn't love a slimy saddle? The next boss was the Deviant, but I didn't have any stingers or chum buckets required to make the summon for it, so I went down to the jungle to get me some stingers.
While I was down there, I ran into a beehive and decided to defeat the queen bee, cause why not? I then went home to make a fishing rod and headed back to the jungle on day 18 to summon a blood moon and fish for some chum, but it was much harder than I expected, cause the enemies were spawning like absolutely crazy. They were spawning left and right. I just kept on dying. By the time I was actually settled in to start fishing, it was daytime, so I just sat there until it was night. It still took a bit of time, but eventually I was able to get some chum buckets. Now that I had all of the components on day 19, I made the Deviant's Cursed, summoned the Deviant, and quickly realized that my Sun Fury was not going to cut it. It was going to be absolutely useless for this fight, because it just doesn't reach far enough. After a couple of attempts, I began researching a new melee weapon that would have some more reach, and I came across the Flamerang. I was still worried that it wouldn't be good enough, but it was my last hope, so I had to give it a shot. I spent the rest of the day farming goblins to level up my Flamerang, and it was getting nowhere. Like, a full day had gone by, and I still only dealt 261 damage. I continued farming goblins for about half of day 20, and by the end of it, my Flamerang was still only dealing 459 damage. I attempted the Deviant again anyways, but this bitch had over 400,000 health. I did the math, and I would have to hit the Deviant over 450 times to defeat it with this Flamerang. It was absurd. After losing over and over again, I decided that I wasn't going to beat the Deviant. Not with hard mode weapons anyways, so I decided to skip this boss for now and move on to the Wall of Flesh.
Okay, so I fully determined that there just isn't a good, like, ranged melee weapon, if you know what I mean, until hard mode, and this boss is going to be impossible without it. And I would continuing leveling up the boomerang, but it levels up once every like 5 minutes, and for me to get it to like the damage of this, it's going to take me like a couple of hours. And I don't want to sit here farming goblins for a couple of hours, so I'm just going to move on to the Wall of Flesh. I'll come back to that boss, but I'm going to move on for now.
I reached hell on day 21 and got right to work building a hell highway. There were a couple of bumps along the way, but about halfway through the day, I had finished the hell highway. I summoned the Wall of Flesh and instantly knew this was going to be unbelievably hard. Partly because the guy had almost 300,000 health, but mainly because the lower its health, the harder the boss fight gets. I lost on my first try, but I did reach level 100 and got to equip a new class called the Sword Master. It increases my melee damage by 150%, my dodge by 20%, and my movement speed by 10%, but decreases my health by 30% and my armor by 15%. I continued fighting the Wall of Flesh on day 22, but came to the realization that it was almost impossible to defeat it because of how much damage it dealt and how much health it had, so the only solution I could think of that didn't require me to switch classes was to reduce the boss health multiplier from 1 to 0.5. I know it's annoying that I'm switching the config around like midway through, but I want to have fun doing this, and fighting an impossible boss was not fun. After this change, I was actually able to get somewhere on the Wall of Flesh. I decided that a class change was in order as well, so I switched from the Sword Master to the Iron Knight. It increases my melee damage by 80%, my health by 50%, and my armor by 30%. I want to go more of a route of like less damage but more health, you know what I mean? I continued attempting the Wall of Flesh for the rest of the day, but the biggest issue is that it was like a gamble. One time I would summon it and it would have 180,000 health, and the other times it's over 250,000 health. I also noticed that lowering the boss health multiplier did pretty much nothing to its health. Like most of the time he was still around 200,000, 250,000 health. I was actually getting better and better, and by day 23 I was able to defeat the Wall of Flesh. I was given all the basic essentials for hard mode from the Wall of Flesh, like an adamantite forge, an orichalcum anvil, but I was just looking forward to getting a new, hopefully better weapon, so I got right to research. Oh, and I also got this pungent eyeball from the Wall of Flesh that increases the spawn rate of rare creatures, so I just kept that in my inventory for when I would eventually need it. I finished off the day by getting titanium for titanium armor. On day 24, I decided that it would be better if I didn't make the titanium armor and instead use that titanium to make frost armor, so I went to fight an ice golem, but that got shut down real quick. I was feeling really down in the dumps after being humbled by an ice golem, and I've heard people say that cleaning can help you feel better, so I spent the rest of the day trying to feel happy again. Once I was done cleaning, I spent the morning of day 25 adding new rooms for my tenants. Once that was done, I spent the rest of the day shrinking my house by 1 block and moving the right rental homes over by 1 block because everything was off by literally a single block. I finished moving everything over on day 26 and spent a bit more time entrapping my house in more rental homes, cause why not? Afterwards, I kidnapped a traveling merchant, turned him into a knockoff Captain America shield, and summoned a goblin army to upgrade it, but what I didn't realize was that this would just summon those hard mode goblin sorcerers or whatever they're called, and I ended up spending the rest of the day just trying to kill one of them for the Shadow Flame dagger. I continued fighting trying to get this dagger on day 27, but these goddamn sorcerers are just way too difficult to hit with such an awful weapon that I have, and not to mention that the knockoff Captain America shield, it sucks ass. I guess melee is just, it's just really bad in an RPG setting. I did reach level 150 though, and changed my class to the Mountain class. It increases my melee damage by 125%, my health by 60%, and my armor by 40%, but decreases my movement speed by 5%. Once I was level 150 though, a huge turning point happened. That turning point being that these bosses were only going to get harder from here. Like, I was just barely able to defeat the Wall of Flesh that had 250,000 health, and I still have to defeat the Deviant, that's like the boss before it, that has over 400,000 health. It just wasn't gonna happen. I also still only dealt like 7,000 damage, so I decided that in order to break the game and not go insane while doing it, I was going to have to raise the item XP multiplier. I thought doing this was fair because in all of my other videos, the XP multiplier was much higher anyways, it wasn't just ×2, so I increased it from 2 to 10. Let's break this game together. I spent the rest of the day fighting these goblins just to get rid of them because I obviously wasn't going to be getting a Shadow Flame knife anytime soon, and just as it was about to turn day 28, I accidentally summoned the Skeletron Prime. And I almost beat him. Like, I got him down to 11% health. I almost won. Knowing this, I summoned the Skeletron Prime right after I respawned and defeated it. It ended up dropping an ass piece of equipment called the Reinforced Plating that pretty much just reduces the damage I take by 5%, which is less than like the worm scarf you get from the Eater of Worlds, so I never used it. As I was sorting through my loot, a stupid wandering eye came over to my house and murdered not just me, but over the course of the morning of day 28, it murdered every single NPC I had. Every single one. Since the Skeletron Prime was so easy, I feared that the Queen Slime couldn't be much harder, so I went over to the Underground Hollow, got a Gelatin Crystal, and summoned the Queen Slime, but because of the little minions she summoned, I ended up losing. Once nighttime arrived, I summoned the twins and wiped the floor with them. They dropped a fused lens that sounded like it would allow me to do an unbelievable amount of damage, but kill me in the process, so I never ended up using it. I was gonna fight the Destroyer right after the twins, but I didn't have enough Souls of Night, so I went to the Underground Crimson to get some. Once I had the Destroyer summoned, made, and ready to go, I decided that I need to clean my house again after that god-awful blood moon. When nighttime arrived, I summoned the Destroyer, and I was able to do a bunch of damage, but I still ended up dying, like, right away, because apparently the projectiles on this boss deal, like, 3,000 damage. And this guy had over 17 million health. This was going to be a long-ass fight. I spent the rest of the night trying to defeat the Destroyer and doing whatever this is, but no matter what I did, I couldn't do it. I could get close, but never all the way. I was able to defeat the Deviant on day 30, though. Afterwards, I made an Excalibur and spent most of the day leveling up this weapon, and by the end of everything, it dealt 2,547 damage. But then I noticed something. Okay, so I'm running into an issue. For like later on weapons like this, my Excalibur, I need to get 100 million XP to be able to ascend it to the next tier. But for my weapon that is the Sun Fury, that already does 21,000 damage and is already tier 9, to get it to tier 10, I only need 44 million. So I think they updated it to where the later on weapons just need more XP. It's causing these later on weapons to deal 0 damage whatsoever. I've been upgrading this weapon for like the last half hour now, and it is getting absolutely nowhere. Despite how broken this mod was, I looked on the brighter side of things, like how I was now level 253 and could switch to my final class, the Fortress. Increased my melee damage by 175%, my health by 100%, and my armor by 50%, but decreased my movement speed by 5%. My Sun Fury now dealt almost 29,000 damage, and this was nothing compared to what's coming up very soon. I gave up on the Excalibur and continued to try and defeat the Destroyer on day 31, but had no luck. I had nothing to do other than fight the Destroyer, so when it became day, I just slept until it was night. I tried over and over and over again, getting further and further each and every time I fought this guy, but I was still unable to win. Again, I had nothing to do on day 32, so I just spent it sleeping. Once night had arrived, I tried a few more times, but I still never won because his attacks deal so much damage. So I went into the config and cranked the boss health multiplier down from 0.5 to 0.1. I don't even care, bro. This game was broken, and I wasn't going to make myself suffer any longer. I started off day 33 by gathering up the materials to make the true Knight's Edge, but then realized that the Destroyer only had so much health because of its segments, so that means the Plantera should be super duper easy. So I made the quickest, most sloppy arena I have ever made in the underground jungle and defeated the Plantera in 3 hits. Literally 3 hits. I am a beast. I sorted through everything the Plantera dropped and decided to give the Dicer a chance because it dealt a base damage of 940, and this was the best decision of my life. I used the old one's army to level this weapon up just because it was easily accessible, and after just one short army that didn't even let me get to wave 2, this yo-yo was dealing 3,745 damage. I spent the rest of the night and a half of day 34 leveling this weapon up, and by the end of it, not only was I level 452, but my yo-yo dealt 55,685 damage. I am now an unstoppable force. Nobody can beat me. I also used this yo-yo to defeat the golem in literally no time whatsoever. After all this grinding, I decided to take care of the lunatic cultist, and I literally defeated him before he spawned. Like you know the animation he does before the fight even starts, where he's like charging up. I literally defeated him before that happened. He dropped me 2 things of use. The first was the Mutant's Pact. It just gave me another accessory slot, and the other thing was a Celestial Rune that would fire additional attacks based on the class I was. So I equipped this right away. I went to go take down a pillar right away, but since this is Eternity mode, I can only use like a specific class to take down like a specific pillar, so I will unfortunately have to multi-class for just a brief moment. I began gathering up a weapon for each class to level up on day 35, so I started with the Summoner, and this class had a perk that would change the entire course of this mod forever, like the next video too. The perk is called Masochist, and it makes your defense 0, but increases damage by 1% for every single point of defense you had, and you can upgrade it until it's a 3% increase in damage for every point of defense that you have. At this point, my defense was over 1,000, so in using this perk, I can increase my damage by over 3,000%. I did this, and my optic staff did a base damage of 12,111 damage, and after completing half of the first wave of the old one's army, it dealt 230,657 damage. The Masochist perk is why I dealt so much damage in my first RPG video, and is the reason why I thought I could like never replicate that damage in any of these other videos. I thought the Summoner class was just the best, but it's just because of this one perk. Once I thought that all the weapons had been leveled up enough, I switched back to the melee class with the Masochist perk, and my yo-yo dealt 3,257,833 damage. For reference, the base game Zenith deals around 300 damage, so my yo-yo was almost 11,000 times stronger than the base game Zenith. That's absurd, that's insane. I spent the rest of the day farming the old one's army for levels, and even beating it at one point, and by the end of it all, I was level 746, and my yo-yo dealt 8,932,455 damage. These numbers are insane. This game is so broken. I had inevitably reached a point where I was killing anything that came my way with just a single touch, so I cranked the boss health multiplier all the way up to 10, and the NPC health multiplier all the way up to 50, and I was still dealing too much damage. On day 36, I decided that it was finally time to take out these pillars, so I began with the Stardust pillar, and due to the absurd amounts of health everything had, my game started moving at literally like 1 frame every like 10 to 20 seconds. It was horrible. I had to restart my game multiple times, but decided to crank the health multipliers back down just until the pillars were defeated. I was then able to take out all of the pillars, even though with the Nebula pillar, I ran into an issue of it having over 2 billion health. Over 2 billion health. I then switched back to melee and got ready to defeat the Moonlord with a yo-yo that dealt 19,386,502 damage. But I forgot to crank the health multipliers back up, so he died in an instant. From the Moonlord, I got a galactic globe that summons the true eyes of Cthulhu to protect me, so I equipped them, but they were annoying as hell, so I just got rid of them. I also got a star right that I ended up using for a bit. I spent the morning of day 37 gathering up all of the materials to make the Sigil of Champions in order to summon the next boss, Iridanus, or whatever, Champion of the Cosmos. This game had gotten to a point where it was either one-shot or be one-shot, so it took me a few tries, but eventually I defeated Iridanus, the Champion of the Cosmos. He ended up dropping a bunch of enchantments, which I honestly just equipped at random. He also dropped a Crucible of the Cosmos, which is like a crafting interface that allowed me to make the Slime Slinging Slasher, and this was literally the best weapon damage-wise that I've ever used in Terraria, like ever. This weapon had a base damage of over 1 million. I spent day 38 leveling up my new weapon and gathering up the materials to summon the Abomination, but for the summon I needed a Snow Globe, but you can't get those unless it's Christmas time, so I just cheated one in. Cause it's like, I'm level 1000, my weapons deal millions of damage. What else can I do to make this even more broken? With this, I summoned the Abomination and defeated him in like 2 seconds. Like literally 2 seconds. He couldn't do anything. Afterwards, I made the Mutant summon, and this is what happened.
I'm not doing that.